Yeah. I love my HBCU. And boy, I love it, love it. I love it, love it. I love my HBCU. And man, I hope my team they won. I hope my team they won. Yeah, man. I hope my team they won. I hope my team they won. Yeah. I tune into the HBCU Sports Lab to see if my team won or lost. If they lost, I'm quiet as a mouse. But if they won, keep tab. I'ma do the dab, yeah. Dr. Cavil, he know what he be talking about. Mike and Charles, they know what they be talking about. They compress the analytic data with this hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they won or lost, and who the ball, who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention.
This is Dr. Cavil inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington, Charles Bishop. Charles, let's give Mike a round of applause, man. Welcome back, Mike.
Thank you. It's good to be back.
Oh, it's good to have you. Good to have you. We got a little nervous there, man. We thought you flew the coop. You like, nah, we good. Deuces to the guys.
Yeah, life on the road, man. Life on the road, but at the same time, life on the road can be bad.
Yeah. People think it's overrated more than many people think, but it's a way of life. We'll make it work. But we're in episode 240 of Inside the HBCU Sports Lab radio show and podcast. The show that's covering the sporting HBCU for all things HBCU sports from institutions, large and small, from the NAIA to the NCAA. We share insights and information on the HBCU sports culture, HBCU athletic aesthetics, and facilitate the story of HBCU athletic programs and the business of HBCU sports. Whether you're in the OVC, Big Style, Colonial Athletic Association, FCSYs, and all those other independent programs at the Division II, NAIA, we show love as well. I'm your host, Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, along with my co-host, Mike Washington, Charles Bishop. We're filming from our home studios and sending a signal live to KCOH 1230 AM studios with the Texas Radio Hall of Famer, none other than Ralph Cooper, in the beautiful home of Texas Southern University from Houston, Texas. Well, Mike, I gave you a little great introduction. Let's go back to Professor Bishop. Professor, I see you smiling on with it. Who messing with you today?
Well, I'm laughing because all those phone lines jammed up are people trying to get hotel rooms in Jackson around October 22nd. So I'm
that must be homecoming. That must be homecoming.
A little homecoming action.
Yeah.
Did you cheat at all and have get the information a little early?
I might have cheated just a little bit, so my room is secured.
I said just a little bit. I looked over. I didn't stare. I just looked over at the paper.
Yeah, hey, I'm like, oh, okay.
If you ain't cheating, you ain't trying.
Man. Hey, don't say that right now because they still trying to get baseball on the way at the professional level. So that's not working. But that's a whole nother discussion because while we talk about baseball, we had college baseball. And guess what? We had the Andre Dawson Classic. This is the question I wanted to jump off as we move any forward. I want to get your thoughts. Saturday was a unique day for me. I literally sat on my couch and saw ESPN, TNT, I should say, NBA TV network had the HBCU NBA game for All-Star Weekend. It featured Howard and Morgan State. Howard had a home game. They moved it based on this partnership. Money was involved. AT&T supported it. Obviously, NBA Foundation. So a lot of financial support, upwards to $1.3 million in total money associated with. All those were associated with that. Then you had Andre Dawson Classic Major League TV. That's Major League Baseball TV network, if you would. And you had on Saturday 2 games broadcast, starting with Jackson State and Southern. Fascinating game and went down to it. And then at the night capper, you had Alabama State and PVAMU, welcoming them into the SWAC in terms of representative playing each other. So that was fascinating. Obviously, you had Prairie View, Pine Bluff in the mix playing in that game, along with Grambling, to name some of the schools that were participating throughout the SWAC. So it's fascinating to see watching that go down. Obviously, New Orleans, University of New Orleans, was the non-HBCU associated with that game. That was fascinating. And then you tap it off with HBCU Legacy Bowl on NFL Network. So again, you have the NBA Network, MLB Network, NFL Network showcasing these games. Let me go back to you, Charles. What are your thoughts on this? What does this mean in terms of the greater landscape visibility for HBCU programs, particularly in this case, you're talking about the FCS Division I level. We're able to showcase multiple sports, baseball, football, and basketball in various ways. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, it's like the dawning of a new day, and people see the value in HBCU sports. I'm tremendously excited about it. I'm a huge baseball fan, so to have HBCU baseball on MLB Network, you had the Legacy Bowl going, you had basketball going, and I found myself out and about, flipping through my phone, trying to make sure I got to everything. But just to have all of those mediums of each sport televised, it is literally the dawning of a new day. I keep saying we're on the cusp of this just amazing renaissance, but we're seeing that television sees value in HBCU sports. It's really exciting.
Great point. I'm gonna come to you, Mike, with the same question. One thing I want to add is at the end of the night, stay up a little bit. And basically, like a lot of middle-aged men my age, and I'll use that kindly, tend to use the nightcapper, and you have ESPN on. And so it got late, and so we're in the LA edition. And so they did a update about these games, and they had a section that featured HBCUs. So they had the HBCU Legacy Bowl on the NFL Network. Then it had the HBCU NBA All-Star Game featuring two HBCU programs, Morgan State and Howard. That was on there. But I was surprised a little bit as it started to tune off and go into the other games. It didn't have the Major League Baseball Network games on there. So just in overall, whether that was the case or not, what are your thoughts in terms of what this means for HBCU programs, particularly those at the Division I level in the MEAC and the SWAC?
Yeah, I think I'd reiterate CB's comments. I think it's an opportunity for further growth. I think, are we on the cusp of a new age? Absolutely. You got so many programs that are now streaming and have their own channels. 10 years ago, did you have the MLB channel? Did you have this channel for this sporting organization? So I think it is big. I think the HBCU can further grow. I wish I would have seen more advertisement, more marketing of the events. But I mean, the Andre Dawson Classic alone, which it started out as like the Urban Invitational, and I think it started in 2008. And so you can tell it's shown some growth over the years. I would have, I didn't get a chance to see it in the game, so I was kind of looking at the results on my phone as I was traveling and going to my son's lacrosse games, and I was kind of checking out the scores. And I was like, all right, I think we have something here. We have something that serves as a platform for visibility for HBCUs. And I think it can only grow if you look at where television, where streaming, where these markets are going. So I think it's a great opportunity. There is one caveat I noticed. Remember when FAMU and Bethune came into the SWAC? We were saying, what's going to happen with baseball? The scales of almightiness have tipped. Florida A&M beat Prairie View. I think Southern had one win against Jackson State, but it was pretty Florida A&M. It was pretty much dominated seemingly by the East. Had a couple of wins, but if I look at it just high level, Florida A&M, Jackson State, Alabama State, it seemed like that East seems to be at least the early power in terms of baseball. We'll see as the season matures, but I kind of noticed that early in the season as well. That's kind of a side note or caveat to this.
Yeah, I looked at that as well. As you started saying that you really didn't see the scores, I saw the score with that Jackson State and Southern. Classic, every time they get on the field. How does that happen? Went down to the wire. A late home run gave further room for error for Southern as they got it done 8-6. So that's just a classic matchup. If we get anything like we got in the championship game last year, it's going to be fascinating fun to watch. But I did notice that you said other than Southern that went 2-1, the rest of the teams were FAMU. They went 2-1. Alabama State went 2-1, and then you also had Jackson State go 2-1.
Jackson State, yeah.
But you had Prairie View go 1-2. Pine Bluff struggled throughout that matchup, getting a little feedback. So we're going to probably end this early, see if we can go to a break, see if we can get the stretch straightened out just to see what's going on there. But with that being said, it was fascinating so many days watching what's going on. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back after this break. We'll get in a little more news of the day. Championships were announced this week. We'll see what we can do on that. And then we'll come back and see about a little more of the basketball. It's tightening up. It's champions. Somebody's going to look for some seeding. Somebody's going to be out of the tournament. Somebody has already wrapped up a #1 seed. It's gotten tighter and more interesting in the MEAC. So we'll get a chance to really look at that a little more. With that being said, I think we cleaned it up a little bit, so we got a little more time. Let me stick with you, Mike, and go to you in terms of what are some news that you want to break today? I'll talk about it, I shouldn't say, not really break. Mike, you on mute, Mike.
Sorry about that. I hate to be the one to break it to you. Hopefully you can hear me now. Sorry, somebody passed by. I'm in a hotel. But Prairie View A&M, men's and women's, indoor track and field.
You say he hate to break it to you?
Hate to break it to you.
Right.
So the women's indoor track and field won their second consecutive SWAC championship. So kudos to them. Kudos to Coach Angela Williams, who was named Coach of the Year. So through all 17 events, the women's team finished with 133 points overall in front of Alcorn. Hopefully I'm saying it right. I don't want to hear none of them Jackson State fans say it's Alcorn, whatever. Alabama, 5, FAMU 72, Pine Bluff, yada yada. Then that little school in Mississippi finished with 44. So solid performance all around. You had, just the distance medley team of Diana Murphy, Jordan Dweiler, Jalen Elrod, Sydney Devereaux. They finished with a time of 12 minutes, 21 seconds. Kaiser Roberts finished with the overall 60-meter dash, 7.47. I was that fast when I ran, too, a little bit faster. And then, Jade finished second overall in the 200-meter dash. Solid performance overall by the women's for the second year in a row. And not to be outdone, the men's team. Oh, yes, the Hill. The men's team captured the 2022 Southwest SWAC championship crown. Coach Chris Clay also was named Coach of the Year. They finished with a total of 120 points ahead of Texas Southern, ahead of that little school in Mississippi called Jackson with 70. Southern had 70 points. Bethune had 69. UAPB had 63. So it goes downhill. Solid performance again. Damon Cobbs Jr., just to name a few, second overall in the 400-meter dash, time of 47.55 seconds. Jamal Wote, who we interviewed him on 1876 Sports and Culture, or spoke with him, also finished first in the 3,000-meter run. That's a long way. You normally got to take a car to go that far. And then the distance medley, a team of Worthington Moore, Ethan Phillips, Simone Shy, finished with a conference record time of 10 minutes. 10 minutes, 11 seconds. Oh my gosh, that is fast. So a very solid performance by the Prairie View men's and women's indoor track and field team, not to be outdone with the sprinters. There's just too many accolades to go around. So kudos to both of those teams. I always mess with CB. We got to get it in where we can since our football team lost in Jackson. So I got to get it in where I am. But it's all in good faith.
Great point there. I go to you, Charles, in terms of what news you want to share next. Did get the update where Michael Ford, shout out to him, said, remember NFL Network broadcast a game, Pro Bowl Stadium last year during week 0. Yes, that is the Black College Hall of Fame game. They've been airing that for the last couple of years. I'm interested to see with them doing this game, will they get in the business of maybe airing a couple of more games from the MEAC, SWAC, or even SIEC, CIAA in terms of that? So that'll be fascinating to keep your eyes in terms of these networks as they see more value, as Charles said, when they get in the airing those games. Charles, what other news that you want to share?
Yeah, well, let's go to something breaking now that's hitting our HBCU websites. With Jackson State, they released their schedule today. Our team is excited. Our fans are excited. Our alumni are excited. And our students are excited. That's coming from Coach Prime himself. Although the season is more than 6 months away, the anticipation of what to come is tremendous.
Professor Bishop, you think everybody excited?
I think everybody a little excited. Listen. Let's take a look at the schedule. They start off with the Orange Blossom Classic, PVAMU September 4th, September 10th. One more time, let's do it in Memphis, Tennessee State. The G-Men, they come and pay a visit to Jackson, Grambling State Tigers, September 17th. September 24th, it is a revamped Valley coming to Jackson, Mississippi. That's right, Valley coming into Jackson. Alabama State, that game is October 8th. Bethune-Cookman on the road in Daytona Beach, October 15th. Homecoming. Get those homecoming plans together now. Camels will be coming to Jackson, Mississippi, followed by the hated rival, the Southern Jaguars, October 29th. November 5th, Jackson State pays a visit to Houston to take on the Texas Southern Tigers of BBVA. November 12th, it is a visit to Mobile, Alabama to take on the Alabama A&M Bulldogs. And they close out the regular season going down to Lorman, Mississippi to take on the Alcorn State Braves. So the SWAC Championship will be December 3rd. And the Celebration Bowl is December 17th. So let's get it all in.
Hey, wait a minute. Did you say they're going to Mobile?
They're going to Mobile, yes.
So they're playing Alabama A&M at Mobile.
Yes.
Interesting. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
With that being said, we're going to go to this quick break. Before I do that, Big South OVC announced football partnership. You may remember this is similar to a partnership that was done between the ASUN and the WAC, as neither team had enough of the minimum number of teams, which is 6 from the NCAA, to have an automatic qualifier for postseason play. Obviously, football, that's the FCS championship. I want to bring this up because obviously Tennessee State currently is in the OVC. We heard about Coach Eddie George in terms of his thought process of the OVC being a dying conference. I wonder if this is enough to him to rethink that, or is he still looking for other opportunities? We'll park that and let the folks that are discussing in the chat, let them give me some thoughts in terms, and we might bring that back on the second part. But let's go to a break, and we'll be right back after the end of the first quarter. We'll get into the second quarter. Stickers will be right back after this quick break.
Charmin Ultra Soft has so much cushiony softness, it's hard for your family to remember they can use less.
Sweet pillows of softness.
This is soft.
Holy Charmin. Oh, excuse me. Roll it back, everybody. Sorry.
Charmin Ultra Soft is so cushiony soft, you'll want more, but it's so absorbent, you can use less, so it's always worth it.
Now, what did we learn about using less?
You gotta roll it back, everybody.
We all go, why not enjoy the go with Charmin?
From novice to aficionado, find yourself here. High quality cigars plus personal customer service with Slow Burn. Visit our website, www.slowburnwaco.com. Slow Burn is Waco's only mobile cigar lounge featuring a meticulous, curated collection of premium cigars. It's more than a mobile lounge. It's an environment and an experience rich in history, luxury, and personality. An elegant extension of any celebration occasion. It's the perfect escape and meeting place, a space where you can relax or enjoy a shared passion. Have Slow Burn plan your next big event, or before you are planning to celebrate your win over your athletic rival, you can shop our collections at www.slowburnwaco.com.
But if they want, keep tab. I'ma do the dab, yeah. Press the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna lose, yeah, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, yes, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Cavil with Inside HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. As we get into it, let's get into some women's basketball. We'll start with the Big South. What's going on here? Interesting when we talk about that, when you look at North Carolina A&T and Hampton, they've struggled, to be frankly, in terms of the conference. It looked like A&T was playing a little more basketball in terms of that. They are sitting at 10-6, so they do have a winning record in terms of the conference play. They are 13-13 overall, hitting the 500 mark, but they are behind in terms of 3 games behind first place, with actually 5 teams in front of them. But they're looking at seeding to see if they can make a run in the tournament as they're closing up on the season in as well. So it'll be fascinating. Right behind them, although it's a losing record, is Hampton Lady Pirates 6-8. They are 6 games back based on that 10-14. So the Hampton Lady Pirates are playing right now. They're playing against Radford early in the first quarter, tied up 11-11. And so it'll be fascinating to see, can they make a late season run, at least improve their seeding in the tournament and just go off. As you know, as you get in the tournament, anything can happen. We talk about that magic. So it'll be fascinating to kind of keep up with that to some degree. Before I get each of you all to chime in, let's jump over and give you an update on OVC. Tennessee State Lady Tigers really started off in terms of great fashion, starting off really hot, but they have struggled as of late, and it's just not working out for them as they continue to struggle, as they have lost 6 straight games. They sit at 6-10 in the 8th seed. They're pretty safe there because they have a 4-game lead over Southeast Missouri State, Red Hawks, and Morehead State Eagles, in terms of at least getting in that 8th spot in the seed. But that means you're going to take on somebody like Belmont Bruins that are 14-2 overall, in the conference, but 18-7 overall. So daunting task, obviously, as you try to prepare for the tournament. Let me stick with you, Mike, in terms of North Carolina A&T, Hampton, or Tennessee State, either one of those that you want to look at and talk about what we can expect as we get ready for the Big South tournament, which will be actually the last tournament for A&T as well as Hampton, as they'll be heading for the Colonial Athletic Association. But Tennessee State at this point looks like they'll be still in the OVC. So we'll see what that means. What are your thoughts in terms of women's basketball?
So if you look at the Big South, you got to say that North Carolina A&T has a puncher's chance. They have a winning record in the conference. I believe they're 10-6. But here's the other thing. If you look at the overall statistics, they're kind of up there, 3rd in the conference in scoring. They are 7th in scoring defense, so they're allowing a lot of points to be scored. But they're number 1 or 2 in rebounding, and number 3 in the conference in free throws. All critical data points to determine, how good a team can be on a given night. It's all statistical. It's all data points. But you got to say, if you look at them, they actually have a shot at least making the tournament. Now, the other piece is Hampton. You got to say they don't seemingly have as good a chance. And then if you go to the OVC, I don't know. Tennessee State, they've lost their last 5 or 6 games. You really don't know if they have any kind of chance as they go into the tournament. So they just hadn't performed really well, unfortunately.
Great point. Before I ask you that, Charles, let me give a shout out. Michael Ford jumps back in here. NFL Network broadcast HBCU game. Could be good publicity, no doubt. National Football League. And he added in the sponsorship money could be good. Yes, when you talk about NFL, that's not an issue. They do have access to money. Good evening. You got Aubrey Parker in here, Chad Cooper. Let me go back. We got Willie Alex Hine, Carls Edmond, Jeff Roberts. OVC Big South is a short-term fix. Travel shouldn't be an issue since it's just football. I agree with that. It is certainly a short-term fix, probably a 1 year, just like you had with the Atlantic Sun and WAC. You got to believe they both schools. I think Bryant is already looking at joining the Big South, which would have saved them this year, even being at 6 for the automatic. So this is probably more in regards to OVC at 5. You got to believe they're going to be bringing in at least a Division II school, get to 6, which means they'll create their automatic bid. So I don't think it's a long-term fix at all. I think this is just what they have started to do. As I said, this is just a mirror copy of what happened with the ASUN and the WAC, so they can make sure that a representative of the conference will get a AQ. But they're just being fair for the institutions to make sure they do the best of what they can do. Lana Shaw thought JSU would try to schedule a non-conference top 5 FBS school like Sam Houston State. I think that is all based from the standpoint that Sam Houston State's schedule is already fixed. So you can't just jump on somebody's schedule. Campbell, as they said, has a top-ranked FCS class. So if that's what you were wanting to see in terms of Jackson State play an FCS program, historically white college university, they did that. So it's interesting to me that people always find something that they don't see right with the schedule, whatever. But that's another discussion. I don't think people are serious about that. They do that jokingly, but I'll play along with you if you want to. Ricky Burton, good evening. Shout out to Thomas Einstein Maddox, Marquez Hardis, Clarence W. Bivens, Chuck Hunt in the building. SBB TSU is watching. Oh, somebody in with a code name. All right, K. Johnson, trying to get a little tidbits. We'll give you some love.
Somebody with a CIA name.
Dexter Hill. Who else we got in? Edward Dwight Moore says, hated rivals. I thought we had a love affair. I love it. Good point. George Harderberry, Kate Johnson, Roderick, Byron Holmes, Dr. Holmes. Thanks for lunch today, Dr. Holmes. Fred Whitted. Who else we got in here? Doc, is Professor Washington telling the truth, or is it that one of his old fishtails? That's one of his old fishtails. Yeah, you got to watch Mike. Mike comes out of the water with all kinds of tails. But Charles, as we get back into it, any thoughts in terms of OVC Big South? Anything that stands out?
Yeah, I was, I kind of kept an eye on Tennessee State for a little while because they had won 5 in a row, and you don't know when they go on a skid like they have. You don't know if there's injuries of some sort, but I think kind of the future is looking bright for Tennessee State because they're led actually by a freshman from Houston, Adams. Yeah, so she's averaging 13.1 points per game, so they should be okay holding on to that AC. We'll see what sort of momentum they can build over February, but it's very puzzling that they've gone on this little 6-game stretch, and so I'm curious as to if there might have been some injuries along the way there.
Yeah, good point. Let's go to the MEAC where it's really getting interesting. You're talking about of all the conference at the top where there's going to be a race to the finish line. It's on the women's side in the MEAC. Howard is at the top, but they're at 9-2. That's 15-8 overall, but they have 3 teams behind them, only 1 game back. That's Coppin State, Morgan State, Norfolk State, all at 8-3. Jockeying to see if they can make that late move. So it's going to be fascinating to look at this race down the stretch. Who do you say? What do you say about this, Professor Bishop? Any team that you want to hedge your bet and say that you're putting a finger on?
Oh, this is tough because, like you mentioned, there are 3 teams, all 8-3, just right behind Howard. But I kind of want to keep my eye out on Morgan State. I think they're one of the tougher teams in the lot there, and they can get hot. They're 14-7 overall, but when you kind of take a look at them, they are a very interesting team to kind of sit up and watch. And I'm just really interested to see what happens going forward with them. Young lady by the name of Taylor Addison, one of their good scorers, and Brisker averaging 10 points a game, and Addison 5 rebounds a game. So Morgan State is a team that I'm going to kind of keep an eye on as we go forward in March.
Yeah, when you get to you, Mike, no big matchup if everybody can stay the course, but we've seen these upsets of late, so let's be careful about jumping too far ahead. You have North Carolina Central at Howard, Morgan State at Delaware State, Coppin State and Maryland Eastern Shore, South Carolina State at Norfolk State. Monday, obviously, you have the flip with Maryland Eastern Shore and Morgan, North Carolina Central, Norfolk State, South Carolina State at Howard, Delaware State at Coppin. So you don't have any of those big matchups that could throw you off. Don't have any top 10 matchups, and we'll get to that in terms of the third quarter to give you a little bit about that. Who's in the top 10? What are your thoughts in terms of what's going on the MEAC? In the MEAC.
I got to go Howard. Be careful of the hot hand at the end of the season. You look at Howard's wins, their most recent wins, and I'm talking recent. wins over Norfolk State, Delaware State, Morgan State, Coppin State. And these were not like okie doke wins. Coppin State was a 3-point win, but Morgan State, that was about 17, 18 points, give or take. That's a convincing win. So, and it's toward the end of the season. So be careful of the Ides of March. Et tu, Brute, little Shakespearean. Where else?
Little Shakespeare, yeah.
Where else would you get Shakespeare than on Dr. Cavil's show? Be careful. Or watch the odd hand at the end of the season.
Only from Mike Washington.
I got to go with Howard.
Charles would know what you're talking about, too. I saw that.
So I got to go with Howard just based on how they're playing, at least as we approach the tournament and they're head-to-head against some of the other teams we talked about.
They do have the championship medal. They won it last year, regular season, and in the tournament. So that's a good point. Let's move over to the SWAC quickly before we get into our second half of the show. Jackson State Lady Tigers, not to be disrespectful, because it's going to be interesting how far they can take out this win streak. That's probably the news of the day, not in terms of them continue to win. They're at 14-0, 16-6, number one in the ranking last week. Don't see any reason why that will change, but especially with Norfolk State, the team that was right under them, losing what some people thought was an upset. But we look a little closer. You have a team like Texas Southern Tigers.
There you go.
4 straight wins.
Yep.
Alabama A&M, 4 straight wins. Alabama State, with the second best record at this time, with 5 straight wins. Fascinating to see that. Prairie View has won 2-2 in the last couple of weeks, winning their last game, so they're actually sitting at 9-6. Fascinating to see. Sticking with you, Charles, in terms of those next seeded teams, which team are you keeping your eyes on between Alabama State, Alabama A&M, and Texas Southern in regards to who can get into that second and third seat and at least get a good seeding as they try to see if they can stay away from Jackson State until the championship game?
Texas Southern University is a scary basketball team. They have scorers. They put up points. Adriana Avent, she's averaging 17, almost 18 points a game. Taya Bridges, she's a double-digit scorer as well. Texas Southern can put the ball in the hoop. They can be a scary team if they start knocking down some threes. I think, like we've said, week in, week out, where Jackson State really kind of beats you up is rebounding the ball and getting a lot of offensive rebounds, second chance opportunities. But this is going to be a very stern test for Jackson State this weekend. Not only playing Texas Southern, but anytime you go down to Prairie View and go down to the Baby Dome, it's just a different environment. Probably one of the most hostile environments, I think, in HBCU basketball. So it's going to be a really stern test for the Texas two-step this weekend.
I like that. Great point. In terms of what you're thinking, Mike, what's fascinating about Texas Southern University, they're basically down to 7 players, healthy players. So they're really getting it done with a limited bench. Fascinating to see what's going on. But which direction are you going in terms of that 2 and 3 seed? Who's going to sneak in that 2 and 3 seed, in this case, to stay away from Jackson State, to see in terms of getting their way possibly to a championship game and take their chances there? Who do you see in 2 and 3 seed?
It's hit or miss between Pine Bluff and Texas Southern. Texas Southern, second in the SWAC in scoring. I think they're somewhere.
Do you see Pine Bluff finding a way to get to a 3 seed?
I think Pine.
Wow, interesting.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I think Pine Bluff has, but I will say go with the hot hand again. Ides of March. Go with the go with the hot hand. Texas Southern. They're doing it. The only thing that scares me about Texas Southern is they're last in the conference in defense. They're allowing 76, 77 points again to their opponents. Their average score, they're even though they're up there in scoring offense, is somewhere along 76, 77. Now, a lot of that statistically is what happened in the first part of the season. So I'm wondering if kind of what CB said earlier with the I think it was either Tennessee State, do they have injuries? Are there other that come to play?
I can ask that about Texas Southern. I'm looking in Tennessee State, hadn't really heard about the injuries there, but Texas Southern, I know they've had multiple injuries. In fact, they just had another player. She was injured earlier, but they just had another injury on the road this week in terms of another knee giving out. So their even attrition rate is off the chart right now.
Yeah. So I see them. Pine Bluff, I say, will sneak in there, top 8. But I think the scariest team to me, I agree, is Texas Southern, just because they're the hot hand going in toward the end of the season. They're doing something well. They're on a 4-game winning streak. So is Alabama A&M.
Yeah, I think being a hot streak is one thing, and I think we'll get a little more of that on the men's side, where who's hot, who's not, because I think you may have the top 6 teams that can get it done. On the women's side, I think it's more important to look who gets that 2nd and 3rd seed to stay away from Jackson State and take your chances in the championship game. With that, that'll do it for the first half hour of the show. Let's take our break, and we'll be right back in the 3rd quarter, and we'll get in the second half. We're going to debut the poll again, week number 8. See what you think. Some changes on the men's side, not really on the women's side. Stick with us. We'll give you some updates and let you know what these guys think about the poll rankings. With that, stick with us. We'll be right back after this break.
Oh, that spin class was brutal. Well, you can try using the Buick's massaging seat. Oh, yeah, that's nice. Can I use Apple CarPlay to put some music on?
Sure, it's wireless.
Pick something we all like. Okay, hold on. What's your Buick's Wi-Fi password? Buick Envision 2021. Oh, you should pick something stronger. That's really predictable. That's a really tight spot. Don't worry, I used to hate parallel parking. Me too. Hey.
Really outdid yourself.
Yes, we did.
The all-new Buick Envision, an SUV built around you, all of you.
Since 2002, Empowerment Resources, Inc., a nonprofit organization, has empowered more than 1,500 youth and adults in Duval and surrounding counties through its programs Journey into Womanhood, Girls Mentoring, Life Skills for Teens, and Parenting Education Coaching. To get involved with programs, volunteer, or donate, visit www.empowermentresourcesinc.org. Follow us on social media, facebook.com/empowerment.resources and Instagram.com/empowermentJAX.
It's never too early to plant the seed, to share the tradition, and instill a sense of pride in your HBCU with your little ones. HBCU Pride and Joy Children's Boutique helps you share your school spirit with a wide selection of adorable kids apparel and accessories officially licensed from your favorite HBCU. Visit hbcupridejoy.com and follow us on all social media at HBCU Pride Joy on Facebook and Twitter.
Press the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna loud, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Bill with Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Before we go to the men and give you a breakdown of what we think there, let's get into the poll ranking. We're gonna start with women, though, because the series not dead. Top 5 programs, somebody dropped out. Got some receiving some votes. So let's look at that a little bit. In terms of receiving votes, Norfolk State Spartans sit at 12-10, 8-3, 35 points. They were in the top 5, so they did drop out this week after a tough upset loss. You talking about how tough it is to be in the top 5. They fall all the way out the top 5. I want to see what y'all think about that. Texas Southern Tigers sit at 10-12, just outside of the top 5. We said they're one of the hottest teams going. But they're at 10-5 in the conference race. You got Alabama A&M Bulldogs. We talked about them as well at 12-13, 10-5. Southern Jaguars have really started off the first part of the season hot, but they've struggled up late. So it'll be interesting to see what they continue to do the rest of the season. They're at 11-14, 9-5. The team that dropped out, as I said, is Norfolk State Spartans, which means top 5. Alabama State Hornets, 12-12, 11-4. They were not ranked, so they jumped in the top 5 at number 5. At number 4, Morgan State Bears out of the MEAC, 14-7, 8-3, 69 points. They were previously ranked 5, so they move up a spot this week in week number 8. At number 3, Coppin State Eagles, 14-10, 8-3, 82 points. They also move up a spot as they are in at number 3. We continue the MEAC parade. At number 2 is Howard Bison, 15-8, 9-2, 85 points. They move up a spot as those last 3 teams move up a spot, but number 1 spot is held down by Jackson State at 16-6, 14-0, all 10 first place votes as they just continue to get it done. This is their 8th consecutive week at number 1 in terms of this year's ranking. Goes back to what they did last year sometime. They are simply a dominant program at this time. Jackson State Tigers maintain their number 1 ranking for the 8th consecutive week. Gentlemen, what are your thoughts? Let me start with you, Professor Bishop. What do you say?
More to say, like I mentioned earlier, they're a team that I'm just kind of keeping an eye on. with regards to what they're doing in the MEAC. But this Jackson State train is just keeps rolling week in, week out. And one of the very interesting things we talked to Coach Tamika Reed in regards to how she's looking at this part of the schedule, and it's keeping this team focused. She made mention that, like in the early part of the schedule, they're blowing teams out by 30, 40 points, and that margin of error has come in with this second half of the season. So it's keeping this team focused in terms of what they need to do going forward, because nobody's going to take a night off against Jackson State. So you have to pay a particular attention, especially this upcoming weekend. This Texas two-step will be a very, very important litmus test, I think, for the Jackson State women's basketball team.
Yeah, tough home environments for Texas Southern and Jackson State. Nice little road trip, but there's teams that are actually playing good basketball more than anything. So I am fascinated to see what this looks like. I don't think there'll be any upset, but I do think this is a good one to keep your eyes on just to see what may go down the road. And we're talking about 2 and 3 seeds. Mike Washington, let me go to you. What are your thoughts on the women's top 5 teams in week number 8?
No, really, I think you can make an argument that Alabama State should be number 2 or 3. But you can't get past, the performance of Morgan State, Coppin State. So it's kind of Jackson State and everybody else. So Morgan State, I would say Coppin State number 3, Alabama State number 2, Morgan State actually number 3. And so I'm sorry, keep Howard number 2, but I think Morgan State shifts down. I think Coppin State head to head has a little bit of advantage, but either way, there's nothing wrong with your top 5. I think it's good to go. I think it's Jackson State and everybody else.
Well, let me stick with you and see what you think on the men's side. See if you're still so kind to me as you welcome back to the show. That's how you make sure you keep your mic on. I like that.
That's right. I'm trying to get some points. Trying to get some points up in here.
Yeah, all teams stay in the top 5. You do have some major rearrangements of those top 5, so we'll see what you think there. No team dropped out, but you have some teams making some movement in terms of receiving votes. FAMU, Florida A&M, the Rattlers, 11-15, 9-6. Tough loss to Alabama A&M after they got by Alabama State. Grambling State Tigers, 11-15, 9-5, and that was at home now.
Yeah.
Howard Bison, 14-11, 7-4. South Carolina State Bulldogs, 15-12, 7-4. We've seen that a little bit up and down the SWAC season with some teams that at the top of the conference losing on the road, but not necessarily at home. So that's something to keep your eyes on. Let's get into the top 5. North Carolina Central Eagles had a tough loss. They could have been in a tie with the head-to-head tie break early in the season. They're sitting at 14-12, 73, 51 points at number 3, so they dropped 3 spots. Brings number 4, Texas Southern Tigers, 13-11, 11-4. One first-place vote, 70 points. They had a last-second shot after being up 20. That's a Texas Southern Tigers seem like they get bored sometimes. Be interesting to see what that looks like as they continue to move. At number 3, you have the Southern Jaguars, 15-11, 10-4. One first-place vote. This is after they ran across of it, but they've had a little tough go as of late. They did get the win over Texas Southern last Monday, which you got to put in there in terms of a perennial game against the 2 teams that were tied for first place. This is after they took a tough loss to Prairie View. Then they got it done against the rival at home in front of 7,000. They took the L as well. Interesting to see what this team looks like. So they drop a spot, but are able to stay in the top 5. At number 2, you have Alcorn State Braves, 11-15, 10-4. One first-place vote, 82 points. Move up 4 spots, if you would. In terms of what they look like, 3 spots, I should say, actually, from number 5, finally getting some love. The Braves, they continue to find a way to get it done. Big victory, sitting at 10-4, top of the race, just a half a game behind Texas Southern, if you would, in terms of them playing one more game, sitting at 10-5 versus 11-4, what you see over there. Let me stick with you, Mike. What are your thoughts in terms of the men's top 5 with Norfolk State Spartans losing, but they find a way to stay number 1, 18-6, 9-2, 7 first place votes, 97 points. But that's the difference. They lost some first place votes, actually lost 2 of them. So it'll be interesting to see what that looks like as we continue down the season. Mike, what are your thoughts?
I'm okay with Norfolk State staying number one. The Alcorn State has some early losses to Prairie View. I don't see why how Alcorn is ahead of Southern. So
they do have the head-to-head victory, Mike. Only played once now. I do give you that, but they had the head-to-head.
Yeah, they do. But if you look at overall record and you look at their losses, they have losses to Grambling, they have losses to Bethune, and these are teams that didn't Southern beat Grambling? I'm sorry.
No, Grambling has beat Southern twice. They got both of them.
Okay.
It's odd because I know what you're thinking about. Southern has beaten Texas Southern twice.
Okay,
Grambling
that's what I'm thinking.
Southern twice, but Texas Southern has beaten Grambling twice. So that trio that's at the top of the conference have swept each other, which we're waiting to see what Alcorn does, which is interesting. And then the other thing that's going to be intriguing about the end of the season is some teams are not playing around robin. How will that work out between who gets, maybe some fortunate framing of the schedule that they don't necessarily play some of those top teams twice home and away. FAMU is one of those teams I can give in terms of that. That's just something, the oddity of what you're going to have to get used to unless they change the schedule. But if them wanting to just play 18 games, you're going to have that schedule luck for some people are in unfortunate framing, but that's something that you need to keep in the mindset, and that's why I'm intrigued about the poll. But continue, Mike.
Yeah, no, it'll be interesting to see how they do on this Texas run. Alcorn, that is, because they have an early season loss to Prairie View. I'll be really interested to see how they do at Texas Southern. So but I think your poll is on because there's so much parity in this league, at least the men's side. I mean, anybody can beat anybody on a given night. Prairie View's the hot hand, so it'll be you can't rule them out in terms of at least making the tournament seeding. But right now they're the hot hand.
Yeah, Charles, what are your thoughts? Certainly, when you talk about hot hands in men's basketball, that's 4 straight games for Prairie View, including at the time a win over top seeded Southern and Grambling that were at the top of the conference. And at the end of the year, they got that matchup against Texas Southern. It's looming. Yep. It'll be fascinating, but bring it back. We'll talk a little bit more about these matchups as we close out. But what are your thoughts on the poll before we take this last break?
Well, let me start off and just say Prairie View is going to be a scary team coming down the stretch, and they're already starting to catch that second win. So keep an eye out for Prairie View. But you talk about styles make fights. Grambling has swept Southern. Texas Southern has swept Grambling, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct. Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then you have Alcorn. This is going to be a big weekend, I think, for Alcorn. They beat Texas Southern at home. It's going to be very interesting to see what the Braves can do on their Texas two-step. Jack State and Alcorn are doing the Texas two-step this weekend. But
with that, Charles, before you get too much deeper, you got Bussy that lost to Prairie View at the end of the game, but that's a assistant head coach matchup coming back.
There you go,
Bussy and Coach Smith. Man, it's just crazy this weekend.
You got a student teacher thing going there, so that's going to be a very fascinating weekend, I think, coming up. But this is fascinating going into March because I still can't get a fix on who is just heads above the pack, if you will, and the SWAC, because on any given night somebody can get swept. So it's really interesting, really fascinating to watch. And in regards to Norfolk, I didn't see Norfolk State getting that L on this past Monday, if I'm not mistaken. I was like, that caught me off guard because I thought they have been playing probably the most consistent basketball of anybody out there.
Right, and you talk about when it's getting interesting. CIAA is actually in the tournament. We'll get a little more on that on Thursday as you get deeper into what's going on. And we'll have a great interview squared up where we'll talk to a commissioner. We'll leave that footnote in terms of which commissioner for a tease for you to come back Thursday. With that, let's get into our last break. We'll get into the fourth quarter, and we'll talk about the men matchups, Big South OVC, MEAC, and SWAC. Stick with us. We'll be back to close out the show in terms of those matchups for you to watch this weekend.
The Cuvée Group is a Florida-based marketing and training consulting firm. We help businesses communicate to their target audience and engage them in conversation. We also help to expand their audiences, which will ultimately result in growth for those organizations. In addition to being a certified constant contact specialist, my colleagues and I are also certified in John Maxwell Leadership Principles. We use these proven principles to conduct workshops, training, and private coaching sessions for individuals and companies looking to take things to the next level. Contact us to schedule a free consultation. Issues today, don't delay, call Cuvée.
Supermarket sushi, really?
No. Wait, Troy, you work here?
I'm never not working. Like Head & Shoulders Scalp Shield technology, up to 100% dandruff protection, even between washes.
Never not working, huh?
Oh, Troy, you're such a good teacher.
Yeah, I know. Never not working. Never not working. Never ever not working.
Are you serious?
Never not working. Dandruff protection that's never not working. Head & Shoulders Scalp Shield technology.
From novice to aficionado, find yourself here. High quality cigars plus personal customer service. Slow Burn is Waco's only mobile cigar lounge, featuring a meticulous, curated collection of premium cigars. Visit our website, www.slowburnwaco.com. That's www.slowburnwaco.com.
Press the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna loud, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Cavil with Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Last segment, fourth quarter. Let's go hard and strong. Viewers out here wanting to hear about these matchups. Let's start it off with the Big South. In terms of North Carolina A&T, man, I watched the game they had on Saturday, and I knew it was going to be trouble at the end of the game. I can't say it necessarily got taken from them, but it sure didn't look good in terms of that. I knew it was going to be a problem when Campbell was trying to get off a shot. They got it off, missed everything in terms of winning the game on the shot, rebound. They get the rebound. All of a sudden you hear this whistle. The lights go off, ball's in the hand. The ball slips out of the hand, goes in the net. You're looking naked eye and you're like, clearly the basket doesn't count. The light was on. But I heard that little phantom whistle, light whistle back there, and I said, this is not going to be good for anybody in terms of how they call it. They went to the monitor, took forever, took a break, huddled back up as you see the referees do, and you like, this is not good. They don't know what's going on, what they go call. They go back to the monitor, they come back, they come out and say, hey, the basket is good. There's 1/10 of a second on the clock. And so you're like, well, hold on, how is the basket good, the ball in the hand? I was like, you could have made it easy on yourself. One, swallow the whistle at the end of the game, let it go. You don't call those. But if you do, you come back and say, hey, the basket was no good, but the foul was called before the clock went out. And then you see if they make it on free throw line. If they did, you get out of there. But it was like, wow, this is not going to be interesting. Anyway, that means A&T took the loss. Hampton held it against Longwood, who's top of the conference, 76-72, but they still struggle overall. Just can't get it done in terms of getting those wins. Hampton sits at the bottom of the conference at 4-10 on the men's side. North Carolina A&T is 7 games back, but they are 6-8, 11-17 overall. They did have the huge upset, if you would, against Longwood, 70-62 last Saturday. So that's fascinating to see what that may mean going to the tournament. And they're looking for that seeding. Mike, let me go to you. But before that, let me go back and go ahead and go into OVC. I kind of stick over Tennessee State because they've just been struggling so much. But let me get in there so you can go in whatever direction. Let me not do that to you. In terms of Tennessee State and what they're doing in their standings, they're 7-9. They're 9 games back, 2 games back at 500. But they are in the 5th seed. You got Murray State that is holding down 16-0, 19 ranked in the top 25. So 26-2. Murray Racers got to give them some love in terms of what they got to do. If you can get in that tournament and you face Murray State in terms of upset, you've done something in terms of defeating the top 25. So you can go any direction. A&T in terms of the seeding, Hampton struggling. Tennessee State, can they find a way to get out of the OVC and sneak the bid? What are your thoughts, Mike, in terms of what's going on the men's side in the OVC or the Big South?
No, let me start with the OVC. So, I mean, you know, I like Tennessee State's chances. You know, I think you said it earlier. They're 7-9, so they do have a puncher's chance. But man, you know, if you look at some of the games they've lost, you know, I think they are. If you look at their last 5 games, they're like up and down. You know, they have a couple of wins against, you know, Eastern Illinois.
They have won 2 straight, but
yeah, they won,
are
up
and down for the most part.
Yeah, they won
last little stride, but we'll see.
They won 2 straight, and I think the consistency is where I have the most concern for them. Yeah. So that you know that's Tennessee State, and then if you look at, you know, you would say that A&T has a chance to make it, but they lost to Hampton. Hampton's at the bottom of the cellar. So
that was a head scratcher. Yeah,
that was a head scratcher to me.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? Yeah. You know, here's A&T. You know, they're scoring 70 points a game. They're in the middle of the conference. Their scoring margin is pretty comparable to the top folks in the margin. And Hampton's at the bottom of the cellar. Yet you lose a game convincingly to Hampton. So I'm scratching my head on that one.
Yeah, fascinating in so many different ways. Charles, what are your thoughts in terms of OVC, Big South? Anything there? Anybody's going to have a punch of chance of getting in the tournament and running the tables and find a way to get that bid into the NCAA tournament?
It's going to be tough. I think for Tennessee State, definitely in the OVC. And then when I take a look at A&T, my question is, you know, how the consistency part that Mike talked about it. Can Marcus Watson stay consistent going forward as we get toward, you know, the conference tournament? Could Cameron Langley, you know, elevate his game? We've seen both of these guys, you know, perform outstanding for A&T, but it's the consistency part that you really kind of keep an eye on with both in North Carolina A&T and Tennessee State. Just tough basketball conferences for them to really make some headway.
Absolutely.
We get into the MEAC on the men's side. Upset Monday. You talk about this, that Monday, especially on the road, but Charles, it was really just one of the teams that were on the road that got it done. That was Norfolk State and Morgan State, 85-74. The other ones were upsets by teams that were previously ranked higher than that. Was Coppin State over Howard, 86-82. The one that shocked a lot of people really was that Maryland Eastern Shore over North Carolina Central, 79-56.
Yeah.
Pretty quietly, though, with South Carolina State at 79-70, defeating Delaware State 79-74, I should say. But in the standings, Norfolk State at 9-2, North Carolina Central 73, South Carolina State has jumped all the way up to 7-4, winning 2 straight games. Howard tied with them at 7-4, 2 games back of Norfolk State. Going to be intriguing going down the stretch. Norfolk State had this great regular season record preseason, but they're struggling a bit of late. Be fascinating to see what's going on. Let me stick with you, Charles. What are your thoughts in terms of the MEAC?
If you can get Norfolk State on the road, I think that's what you kind of keep an eye on with regards to them. They hold serve at home, but they're just one game above 500 on the road. So that's just something to keep an eye on as we get through February, get into the tournament. But to me, just like the SWAC, there's not a lot of room for error. When you take a look at North Carolina Central, South Carolina State, everybody's like registering some head scratching upsets in there. So I just kind of keep an eye on everything going through February. This is going to be these next couple of weeks are going to be very interesting weeks, especially when we flip around and look at the SWAC with Alcorn State and Jackson State doing the Texas two-step this weekend. I think a lot of eyes are going to be over here in the Houston area this weekend.
Yeah, in terms of that schedule. For the MEAC, Coppin State and Maryland Eastern Shore, Morgan State and Delaware State. But check this out. North Carolina Central sitting at 14-12, Howard at 14-11. Obviously, North Carolina Central in the top 5, Howard just receiving votes outside. That's going to be a fascinating matchup. Then you got South Carolina State at Norfolk State, 15-12 for South Carolina State overall, and 18-6 for Norfolk State. Nice records going in that game. Obviously, Norfolk State, #1 team at home against the red-hot South Carolina State. Mike, what are your thoughts in terms of the MEAC on the men? You got some good Saturday matchup.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I still think Norfolk State is still your alpha dog in that conference. They had a loss on the road. I tend to believe, looking kind of at the game, that was kind of just a letdown loss, and not that they can't play on the road. But I do like South Carolina State. They are prone to snipe somebody, to sneak up on somebody. So you look at the 4 teams in there, you can't call it. You got North Carolina Central, Howard scares you. North Carolina Central scares, and South Carolina State scares you. So, but I still think at the end of the day, Norfolk State is still that alpha dog.
Sticking with you, we're gonna go in the SWAC, but Monday is just as good. Check this out. After you get it done on Saturday, Monday you have North Carolina Central at Norfolk State, obviously the number 1 team, 14-12, 18-6. So you got a top 5 matchup going on Monday, but not to be outdone, you have South Carolina State at Howard, 15-12, 14-11. Both of those teams just outside, but jockeying for their first place, man. Saturday and Monday, maybe it's separation, or will it just continue to be stuck there? But let's go into the SWAC before we close things out in terms of these matchups this weekend. You alluded to a little bit in terms of the Texas two-step, 2 of the hottest teams in the conference, placing solid teams in terms of what's going on. So that's going to be fascinating. But before we get in that, you have Florida A&M at Grambling. Grambling's feeling good about themselves. FAMU, not so much. They go on the road. They have to find a way to get these games as they go the Louisiana road trip, and Grambling and Southern in terms of the Saturday and Monday. You have the rivalry matchup with Alabama State traveling to Alabama A&M. Fascinating. A&M is feeling good about getting that road win against FAMU. Alabama State also got a good win against Bethune-Cookman. Fascinating. Bethune-Cookman at Southern. You have Mississippi Valley at Arkansas Pine Bluff. Alcorn at Prairie View. Jackson at Texas Southern. Obviously, it flips on Monday. Just to be said, you have Jackson at Prairie View, Bethune-Cookman at Grambling, Alcorn at Texas Southern. FAMU at Southern. Take it off the gridiron and go on to basketball. Remember, Southern got it done against FAMU when they went out there last time to Tallahassee. Can FAMU, the Rattlers, get a little payback? They certainly need it if they want to stay in the hunt for the race. But let me stick with you, Charles, in terms of your thoughts going on. What do you see in terms of the men, in terms of these races going on right here with 3 of the teams in the top 5, Alcorn, Southern, and Texas Southern?
I think this is a huge weekend for Alcorn. They knocked off Texas Southern at home, and they had a 1-point loss to Prairie View. When you take a look at Alcorn starting Saturday night off in the Baby Dome, that's going to be a huge matchup for Alcorn. Student-teacher matchup, Bussey versus Smith. I'm looking forward to that matchup on Saturday night. But conversely, Jackson State knocked off Texas Southern and Prairie View at home earlier. So this is a interesting weekend for them as well. And, you know, every time you kind of write Jackson State off, they do something just odd and just start winning games. And they found all of a sudden Ken Evans, who's scoring out of nowhere. So if they can get some production from somewhere else, they become an interesting team to kind of keep an eye on. But I think this is a huge weekend for Alcorn.
I like the points you made. Fascinating in so many different ways. Obviously, the Saturday matchups are what you're talking about, Charles, Mike. That Monday matchup I got to throw out at you is a top 5 matchup, which is 2 versus 4. Alcorn at Texas Southern, top of the division. Outside of that, what games has your interest this week? What are your thoughts, Mike?
Oh, in the Baby Dome. Jeremiah Gambrell. And maybe this is not what you're asking for, but I think that's big for Alcorn to do that Texas tour. And I say Prairie View is a hot team, not because I'm a Prairie View fan, but because they're a hot team. Jeremiah Gambrell's been playing. Jawan Daniels has been playing. So they've got to go to the Baby Dome and play a red hot team. That's a game I'm looking forward to seeing. So.
No, we know you are a fan, but to your point, Prairie View's won 4 straight games. So you can say this legitimately in terms of a team that's playing good basketball. Quietly, though, Alabama A&M has won 4 straight games, coming out of nowhere at 8-7. Again, I told you they got that big win against FAMU. They had Alabama State. They have a chance to get a little bit of payback. To be fascinating as they're playing some basketball, because a lot of people wanted to write the Bulldogs off, but they're playing well now. That'll do it for us. Both of your great comments, great breakdown. Glad to see you like the poll. So we'll continue to bring you back and make sure you have the mic as you celebrated what I do on the poll rankings. With that, kudos to all the lab listeners out there. Thank you for listening to Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Make sure you share our podcast with your friends and colleagues. I am Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, Dean of HBCU Sports, coming from inside the lab in the College of HBCU Sports with Mike Watson and Charles Bishop. Again, we want to thank you for listening to Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Watson and Charles Bishop every Tuesday and Thursday. Remember, on Thursday, we will have an interview for you. So stick with us. Make sure you get a chance to see what your thoughts on the interview will go to the commissioner level. We look forward to you continue to check us out. Follow me, Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. That is DrKenyattaCavil, DrKenyattaCavil. Inside the HBCU Sports Lab 1. That's on Facebook. Inside the HBCU Sports Lab on YouTube. What you got, Mike? Who got you laughing like that?
You laughing at the same thing I'm laughing at, right, Charles?
I am, boy. The lab rats on it.
The lab rats, they already on it. Of course.
Green Bean continue to move forward. We'll talk with you soon. Charles.
Of course.
Mike.
Lecture.
The lab listeners out there, tell us what it is. Dismiss.